Mhm. Hey, martial arts journey, men and women. It's me, Rokus, as usual, saying hi, and I also promised for this guy to say hi, so both he says hi as well. He hasn't been on screen for a while, so we're here to welcome you to another live stream of Martial Arts Journey, and we're going to have a very cool guest today. It's Natan Levy, a professional undefeated MMA fighter who's a black belt in karate and kung fu, but already that's fascinating. But aside from that, what's interesting is that he got into MMA fairly late, at a fairly later stage of his life, but he's very good at it. And he recently got a contract in UFC. He's a great prospect, undefeated again in MMA. So he really knows what he's doing. And we're going to talk about his martial arts journey from traditional martial arts to MMA, what it's like to implement traditional martial arts into the scene of MMA, what are the pros and cons of traditional martial arts, and everything related to all of those subjects. So it's going to be a really cool talk. And also, just to give you a heads up for those who are already tuning in and watching, stay tuned until the very end, because first we'll have a one-to-one discussion and talk with Natan, and then we'll move on to a Q&A, live Q&A with all of you, where you can ask questions and we'll do our best to answer those questions, both Natan and myself. So it's going to be fun. So as always, I invite you to prepare your beverage, and let's get this journey started and invite Natan to join us. So hi, Natan.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you very much.
Yeah, we're in different time zones. You have the sunshine, which is great. It's dark already here, but but it's good to see you. So there's so many things I'm enthusiastic to talk to you about. But first, I thought maybe you could just say like a short, brief version of your martial arts bio.
Um, sure. So, really, I was always interested in martial arts. Growing up, it was, Bruce Lee movies, Rocky, all that good stuff. And I always wanted to do martial arts, but I wasn't very committed. I would always start and immediately stop and get bored from everything after a short time. And growing up in Israel, my parents were divorced, so I was growing up with my mom, and my father was in Paris. And my dad was a judo black belt and a karate black belt. So he never really pushed me to martial arts, but it was always kind of cool when I would see him. We would wrestle, and he would show me some wrist locks and whatnot. And finally, at age 15, I started doing kung fu. Started training. It's a long story. We'll talk about it. But from kung fu, we transitioned to karate and started doing both. Then to MMA, and now to the UFC.
So when we first started chatting on Instagram, you mentioned there's some similarities between our journeys. So what would you say are those moments which you found similar in what you saw on martial arts journey?
You know, yeah, I saw the first video, I think 2 3 years ago, and I was like, hey, we're really similar.
Right.
And yeah, from the point, for me, it's further down the road from my journey, but when I was already teaching. So I came back from Okinawa in 2009, 2010, and I just got my black belt in karate. And so, the next thing, the natural thing, is to just start teaching, because really, what are you going to do with a black belt in karate as a profession?
Right.
The path was not to be a fighter. The path was to be a teacher. So I opened a dojo in Tel Aviv and started teaching, and I had a few even successful teams. I would teach, rent mat space and teach a few teams in different locations. I had a bunch of privates. I was doing really well for my age. And the big thing is also I was doing something that I love doing, which is teaching people, helping them, get stronger, get better self-esteem, more confidence, um, which is something I intend to do in the future as well. But at some point, I was like, I have to stop it, and it wasn't just like overnight, but I figured I had to stop and go pursue a dream in fighting and in MMA, and I knew it was now or never. And even though the style I was doing, there was a lot of good things. There was also a lot of like bad things, like BS kind of. And I just in my heart, I knew I knew what I was teaching. Like some of it, I didn't know if it was gonna work. Like sparring, me and my teammates, we would spar very hard. Roundhouse, spinning kicks, knock each other like out. Through the but then like blocking a punch and double thumb strikes to the throat, like we don't know if that works. It's all like the legend says. And I really don't like that. I'm very practical, I'm very skeptical guy. And for me, MMA was like all the good stuff about my martial arts. So when I started, that was like the realest thing, because every fight, let's say we're doing karate, and then I sweep your leg, you fall on the ground, you grab my gi, we start rolling on the ground, and then the sensei is like, stop, get back up, right? So the fight always naturally wants to go into MMA, and then you got to stop it. Same thing with judo, right? Somebody throws somebody, stop. Jiu-jitsu, you're on top of somebody, you want to punch him, but don't. And that's all kind of fake, because the real, as real as it gets, is when you can do everything. Now, I'm not talking about like poking somebody in the eye, because I wouldn't even consider that like proper technique, right? It's not a move. So to me, as like somebody who's real interested in martial arts, it doesn't mean much. Same, when I was teaching karate, a lot of times you'd be like, okay, if you got somebody in a front headlock, how do you get out of it? And the first response of every genius in the room is like, oh, you tap him in the groin. Like, okay, yeah, that might make him let go, but what's a smarter way of doing it? What's a more like, technical way of doing it? So that was always my pursuit. How do you do things the most technically, and what's the realest way of doing things? And that's how I landed in MMA, really.
For a lot of people moving from traditional martial arts to MMA, I know it can be a difficult, like a challenging experience. Like if a person is pure karateka, then they get exposed to wrestling and grappling, and it's like, what the heck is this? I'm thinking your own journey, you went through judo, so it seems like you were quite well-rounded when you started MMA. So, or did you have that, wow, this is actually a different level once you first sparred in MMA, or did you have like that type of experience yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew about it, like, but I wasn't really proficient in anything. I knew what's an armbar, but I didn't really know how to do it, right? I was watching UFC and all that stuff, even since before I started doing karate, actually. So I always knew what MMA was and what Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was. But coming to Vegas, it was like a whole different experience. And yeah, at first, I had like some tools that I could use, but I was mostly like holes, like don't have this, don't have that. Not used to getting punched in the face, not used to punching in the face. And just, it's been like a real learning experience for me. Like it was like starting over, white belt, show up, do everything you got to do to learn.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about your journey, and I did mention that and double check with you if it's true that in a way it could be said you started MMA at a fairly late age for a professional, but you're already like in UFC You had successful fights. So what do you think propelled you to become very good? You mentioned you started off like almost like a white belt in MMA, and now you're in UFC. So what happened there?
I think it's a lot of the biggest thing for me. I think it was persistence over this journey,
Mm.
because I think maybe like the hardship from one point, it pushes you down, it makes it harder, it makes the climb so much more steep.
Mm.
But at the same time, it kind of pushes you. So I'll give you an example. I don't live in Vegas. I didn't used to live in Vegas. So I couldn't just cross the street, go to the nearest MMA gym, try it
Mm.
out. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe I'll go back to
Mm.
teaching karate. Like, I kind of burned the boats,
Mm.
because when I decided, I'll let you know why. Like, the biggest thing that made me make this decision,
Mm.
it was I always wanted to do MMA. I always watched the fights. But when I started doing karate, I was basically told, that's bullshit. It wouldn't work in the streets. In the streets, you'll get hit with a 3-piece, fingers to the eyes, grab your
Mm.
throat and pull it out. Uh, and I kind of stopped watching MMA, stopped really believing in it. And
Mm.
I was very naive at that age. I'll give you an example. I was 15 years old. I don't know if that's normal, but the karate teacher I went to learn from back then, he was like a Sifu, a Kung Fu teacher.
Mm.
He was like known around the town as like being, it's very hard to train with him. He's badass, very
Mm.
Cobra Kai,
Right. Okay.
and very. And he had like a scar on his chest.
Mm.
And the word at school was he was in a tournament in China, in like a
Okay.
Shaolin temple,
Mm.
and somebody shot a chi blast at him, and that's why he's got the scar.
Oh wow, did he like also encourage that legend
No,
or
I
okay?
don't know. I don't know if at the time, I don't know who started it.
Yeah.
Probably just kids. But I'm embarrassed, but I wasn't sure if that was true or not. I was like, maybe, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I've been like that too.
So you can tell how naive I was.
Mm.
And yeah, I could believe that you can finish a guy with like touching him under the armpit and it will stop his heart and whatnot.
Mm.
And slowly with training, at first you have like process when you're a student. Let's say white belt, but it's not really the belt. It's like your level of understanding when you show up and you don't know anything. Everything is awkward. So in the jiu-jitsu room, if I show a back take to a rear naked choke, and the white belt goes, "What do you do if he grabs your arm?"
Mm.
You're not even considering it, right? You're like, "Shut up, do the move." Like,
Mm.
don't be a smartass.
Mm.
When somebody who's a purple belt, brown belt, asks the same question, suddenly you consider it. You're like,
Mm.
"Oh well, if he does this, you do that, right?" And there's a process in like your evolution as a martial artist where your questions suddenly get validation,
Mm.
and like you have more understanding, and there's somebody to talk to and have a conversation about, right? And
Mm.
that's what was happening to me in karate and kung fu. I was getting more proficient at it. I was starting to understand, and same thing, I started to tell myself, okay, if I can kick, at a certain level, maybe I never try to like be better than my sensei or anything like that. But
Mm.
you can see at some point during your martial arts training that you're like, maybe he's doing that a little bit wrong, right? Maybe I'm doing this move a little bit better than my teacher or close
Mm.
to it, or right? Or maybe
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
sparring and I'm giving him more fight than I used to. So that's a natural evolution. And when that happens, you start to really realize like, if we're getting closer, I'm not shooting any chi blasts anytime like it's natural that it just becomes in your head like that was all bullshit. It's not like you don't need somebody to tell you or anything. You just start to understand like how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And leading to when I was in Japan, I was already training like in Okinawa. When I got back from Okinawa, I opened my own dojo, and one day after a few years of like training and being successful, there was like a group chat of all the black belts, and my teacher was very anti-competition. There was like a big taboo. You don't compete. And why do you not compete? Many reasons. First, it was because you might kill somebody.
Yeah.
Then
Right.
it was like if you compete and you beat someone, it makes you like stronger than them. You just beat them, right? So why would you fight somebody that's weaker than you? Why would you want to beat up somebody that's weaker than you?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
same. I had the same expression when I heard it, but I nodded and said okay. And one day, like, we get a group text. Anybody wants to do an MMA tournament and a reality TV show?
Who asked that question? Like was it
The
personal?
sensei.
Okay.
And you're like, what? Like that
Yeah.
don't make any sense.
Right.
But I'm like, me, I'm down.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be like a ripoff of The Ultimate Fighter. They were gonna do an Israeli version.
Okay.
Get some guys in the house, film it, have them fight. So I started training, running, training like a maniac. I would bring a friend who's a judo brown belt, and we would kind of, wrestle, toss each other around, do some arm bars. Um, and yeah, at some point, like it never went down. Like we were seeing, like it's not happening. But I couldn't just go back to just, okay, never mind that. I'll just go back to teaching and running kids class and this and that. I was like, no, I want to do MMA. How do I do it? And just like when I was a kid and I wanted to be the best, that's what I do. I flew to Japan to train for months. Same thing. I was like, how do I become the most proficient at it? How do I become the best at it? It means flying to Vegas, closing all my gyms, you know, no income. Like I was young, I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't saving any of it. Like, but I just decided, okay, a few months from now, I got my plane ticket and I'm going to Vegas. I don't know anybody, but I'll figure it out, and that's what I did. And
Wow.
I closed the gyms, which is like the original answer. I closed my gyms and let my student know, like, I don't want to start passing you around when I'm in town, teach you again, and when I'm not, give you to my teacher. I just gave all my students to my teacher and my friends who were teachers as well, and left. So I burned the boats. I was like, I have to do this.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I didn't go to the level you went through, but I can relate with what you're saying. That having that inner drive, feeling like I just have to do this, and burning all the bridges down. So, but I really respect that. I think that's great. I'm curious, before heading to the next questions, what do you think happened in your teachers, karate teachers, instructors' mind? Because, as you said, like there was this dissonance where he was saying that don't compete, MMA is bad, and then one day he's like, "Do you want to compete in this?" Was he getting money from it, or what do you think was it?
Look, I don't know why at that moment you decided to ask the question. I could tell you that I would like at that period of time, I restarted watching UFC when I got back from Japan, and I was like really into it. Now I don't know if it wouldn't have had asked the questions, would it have made like a butterfly effect, and I would have never left. I doubt it. Like I had like a huge fire in me to do this. I would go to
Mm.
sleep and like just imagine myself like fighting the people I'd watch on TV. Like, how would I do against Machida? How would I do against Shogun? Right?
Right.
Obviously, they would kick my ass, but and certainly at that point. But I would like think
Okay.
about it and imagine what would I do if I was here there. And I don't know why he asked this, but I know that after like it was supposed to go down and it didn't, and I told him like, look, I want to go to the US and do MMA. For me, it was never like about I want to stop doing karate and I want to
Mm.
start doing MMA. It was like
Mm.
I am who I am, do what I do. I want to compete in MMA.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? Like the difference?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It almost feels like if I'm catching it, it's almost like the next evolutionary step, a continuation of your journey versus I stopped this and
Yeah,
it's yeah. Mm.
yeah. And even for me, it was like, oh, I'm gonna represent karate in MMA, right? At
Right.
that point, like Machida was just champion, and
Mm.
he was also a big part of like, oh, maybe I can do this.
Mm.
And yeah, he offered it, but the next thing I know, when I told him I want to keep doing it, I still want to do it. He told me, and we were like brothers, me and him. We were like
Mm.
10 years together every day,
Mm.
almost all day, almost every day, months together in Japan,
Mm.
months together in Europe and whatnot, like really very, very close. And he told me, you want to do it, no problem, but it can't be both. You got to pick karate or MMA.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it wasn't just like, oh, do you want to still do katas or do you want to go? It was like, you can go do MMA, but that means me and you were done. You and all your friends, all your best friends who train with you, you guys are done. Um,
Mm.
because it had
Mm.
happened before, like somebody would do something wrong and get like kicked out of the gym,
Mm.
and that's it. Like you can't really like very cold. Like you can talk to him,
Wow.
like you can talk to him, but you can't really be like his friend. You're not gonna see him every day, all day anymore, because he's not in the dojo. He's not with us teaching classes, and then going to lunch in between, and then dinner after. We're done training the whole day, so we would be like very tight. And then
Mm.
somebody would get kicked out, and like he's just not part anymore. So maybe you keep in touch and like give him a phone call once in a while, but he's not like a part of the family anymore.
Yeah.
And that was basically what I was being threatened with. Like, you're not gonna
Mm.
have. Also, I was planning on saving some money to fly to the US, so I wanted to keep, teaching for like 6 months, 9 months,
Mm.
and basically it was also like no income. You can't teach anymore.
Mm.
You don't train with us. You don't hang out with us. Nothing.
Wow.
And he told me like you got 2 days to think about it. And after
Mm.
2 days, I told him like, look, I love you, thank you for everything, but MMA.
Mm.
Um, and after like people try to like reconnect us, like make us like, you know, um, I'm not sure how to say it, but just like,
Mhm.
okay, forgive him, you forgive him, let him
Right. Yeah.
do his MMA thing. So that was what it was gonna be. Like
Mm.
but it really was never the same again. Um, and
Mm.
then with all kinds of different circumstances, like I kept like being a student of the dojo, but I would really like spend most of my time in the US.
Mm.
And very like a lot of cult stuff. Like it still used me to like teach for free. Like and I would pay membership and I'd be in the gym all day like teaching, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't never get paid for it.
Oh shit.
Uh, yeah, like many stuff like that. But
Mm.
also again, this guy taught me a lot, And like when I got to his dojo, I was like very insecure and very weak. And he like training with him completely changed me. So I always have like a good place for him in my heart, you know.
Right.
But just I think he was misguided. Like he would talk crap about all his teachers, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of am very worried. I don't want to do the same thing to him. Like I know
Yeah.
he done some bad things, but also like, okay, that's his decision. If he don't want me in his karate organization,
Right.
that's his decision. Like I can't force myself. Okay, I decided to do MMA, and so yeah, you know, slowly with time, like I was supposed to stay in karate, but really I didn't. Like really, I started doing MMA and started showing up less, and at the end, like we stopped talking. Um, and I'm very happy with like where I'm at. And also a few years ago, um, I had a friend of mine, like I broke my hand in my last amateur fight. And so I was like spending some time in Israel. I didn't have my visa yet, so I wasn't living in the US. I was just coming here for training camps and fights. And at some point, a friend of mine goes like, "Hey man, I just finished my military service. Do you want to come with me to Japan?" And you know, I haven't been there in years. And I said, "Yeah, sure, cool. Cool, let's do it." And we went there and trained with Shihan Arthur Ovanesyan and his Kyokushin like legend pretty much. And we went there and trained with him. And I was at that point, I was very like over karate, and I was thinking like, oh, it's cool. Let's go back to the roots and train some kicks. You know, I wouldn't mind like doing 1,000 kicks a day, spinning kicks, whatnot, everything that karate is good at, and that's that really, and go eat some ramen. And we trained with him for 2 or 3 weeks, and he kind of really like reignited the karate fire in me, and like just doing things differently from what I was used to. Like I think way more suitable for MMA, and just way more suitable, you know, for sports, like more advanced, like integrating lifting and conditioning and just punching and kicking without all the BS, finger strikes, and just like reminded me that karate is not just like one more fighting style. It is a way of life, and there is a lot of good things to it that I miss and I do love. And after training with him there, I went back to Israel, and I was always like growing up, we were always told we're the only ones who are good. Everybody else is shit.
Yep.
Like, don't even look left and right because everybody else is shit. We're the only ones who are doing something proper, real karate, like in Okinawa. And you know that was like my mind. Like everybody else is shit. Like and he told me, Arthur was like, "Oh, you should train with Shihan Ronen in Israel. He's great. You're gonna love him." And I was like, "Sure, but he probably sucks." And and what he was smart enough to do, he was after I trained with him in Tokyo, he gave me a gift and he told me, "Please give this to Ronen in Israel." I said, "Yeah, of course I'll bring him the gift." And Ronen told me on the phone, "Sure, why don't you come to 6 a.m. Lesson and give me the gift and we'll drink coffee and you know, come do the training with us." And then I showed up. I did it. I met the person who is today my karate teacher, and I said, "Oh, he's actually amazing. He's you know, I don't want to say his age. I don't want to get it wrong, but he's like over 50, and he moves extremely well. He's flexible in body and in mind. It's really not like the dictatorship I was used to, and it's also like I don't feel like there's like expectations from me all the time. Like I go to him when I'm in Israel. I learn from him. I enjoy like doing the karate, like the fighting style, but also doing the everything like with Aikido, same thing, all the Budo, um, all the philosophy, and that's it. And when I'm in Israel, I do that, and when I'm here, I'm focused on MMA. And my goal is one day, when I'm done competing, to teach both, to teach karate and to train people who want to be in MMA.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot there. And first of all, I wanted to say sorry for, that things didn't work out with your instructor and the first one. But I also feel you. I mean, I've been pretty much in the same spot. Like some of the points I'm like, oh, that's exactly the same. And there's one point in me where, in my story, where I actually haven't shared this on record yet, but I'm planning to publish a video about that, where I started becoming enthusiastic about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the friend of mine who was training me, teaching me, he said, let's enroll you in a BJJ tournament. I'm going to train you and it's going to be fun. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I wrote an email to my sensei about it. And he called me up and he said, I think that's a bad idea. I think you shouldn't do it. But I really wanted to do it. So I started to try to convince him and saying, well, I really want to do this. Usually I would not say no to him, but I really just wanted to get there. And he eventually brought up the same card as your instructor. He said, well, you can do it, but if you'll do it, that means you can no longer be part of the organization. We'll stay friends, but I cannot be your teacher anymore. And at that moment, I gave in. Like, yeah, it's like, but I try to understand his logic, and he was telling me that he was being like a concerned dad to his son who is about to drive under the influence, like drive drunk. That's his comparison. Like that was BJJ tournament for him. And he thought that if I'll get into BJJ, and it might have happened that if I went to the tournament, I might have got hooked, and then I would have changed my relationship with Aikido. Eventually, that did happen, but I think he was afraid of that. I think that's a good thing. For him, that's a bad thing. But I think in that situation, that was a threat where he was expecting me to get back and say, okay, I won't go to the tournament. Like he was expecting me to fall back. It was like a bluff. And then eventually when he made that same call like a year later, when I said that I want to continue questioning Aikido online, he said, yeah, you can do it, but then we can no longer be student teacher. I said, yeah, then that's that. He was shocked. He was like, he didn't see it coming. I think he thought I'll say yes to whatever he wants to say. I'm curious to ask, and if we don't have to spend much time here, but I'm just interested. Do you think that was also the case with your first instructor? He was hoping that you will say, I stay in karate. I'll continue being your student. I won't make that switch for you. Or do you think that was just like his thing to ask you?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure like I'm pretty sure it's from ego, right? He didn't want me to. I think like I feel like sometimes he didn't want me to be like karate teacher, but something else student. Like he felt that would make one under the other, right? And it's funny because if I'm going to a ping pong class, the teacher would never tell me that I can't go do tennis, right? So
Right.
I also think that students are like when somebody's trying to grab sand and keep it tight in his hand, what happens? The sand slides between his fingers, right? And he's left empty. And that's certainly something that I don't really want to say like my students. Like there's still some people that I train when I'm in Israel, but like I see them, yeah, my students, but mostly like my friends. And yeah, I feel like that's like the opposite of the way I want to go. I feel like when somebody wants to try something, you should encourage them. And I think everything else is just like ego.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that too, and it's unfortunate that that happens. But I also appreciate your story that you also met a great karate instructor, like your current karate sensei
Mm-hmm.
instructor, that he's encouraging you to do that. So it's great that it shows that it's not like all karate is bad,
Yeah,
or all
exactly.
karate is good. It
Exactly.
depends.
Also, yeah,
Mm.
I said like to myself, like I wanted to train with him. I'm like, why do I need a new boss now? Right? Why would I put myself in this situation now when I need to answer to somebody else? Like I'm never doing that again. And then I saw just it wasn't the situation. And for me, like even like my trainers here in Vegas, like my striking coach Jimmy Giff or my MMA coach John Wood, like I pretty much treat them as if they were my sensei, right? Whatever they say, yes sir, no sir, and I know that'll bring me to where I want to go. So far, it's worked, but like there's always like a limit, right? And I think it's important to keep that limit. Like there are like father figure or whatnot, and they tell me what to do. Yeah, but at the end of the day, like I decide to listen. It's not like forced upon me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I think I'm a little bit like that as well. Like I used to be, and I almost have a feeling you went like that as well. I used to always want to be the best possible student, and not in the regards like, oh, I want to be loved by my sensei, but it was more about, I thought that being the best student will make me the best martial artist in the quickest way. Like I just don't question, and I just say yes. I just trust the teacher. Obviously I got burned by that with my aikido sensei, but I think part of me kept that mentality in regards to respecting and honoring the teacher, and not questioning him on every corner. I think that's not a healthy practice. Like when you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, I love the analogy with a white belt asking random questions. It's like, well, first learn some stuff,
Yeah,
and then we'll get to the
yeah,
questioning. But that's still like, there's place and time for that. It's not absolute. And I think that's what I like in MMA. You're not expected to be a blind follower. But then you can also choose to respect the teacher. You can choose to trust what he gives you. But there's like, it's a very different vibe. When you're not expected to do that, and part of you chooses to do that, it's very different than when you're expected to do that all the time. So yeah, I think
yeah.
that's the difference.
Like if I train with other people, let's say I go and do jujitsu at a different gym, I would tell my coach like, "Hey, I want to go do jujitsu over there. Is it cool?" And you know, he'll say yes, but like it's not like I need his permission. If I decide it's the best thing for me, I would do it. But I'm asking out of you know politeness and like to let him know. I don't want him to like open Instagram and see somebody who's posing with me at the gym after jujitsu or whatnot. And I feel like that's the minimum, right?
Mm.
And of course, I would always say yes. Or many things like along the years that I was here, many things like surprised me. Like first time I was here and like my trainer and like GIF and Forrest Griffin was a UFC champion. He was like training him first time I got here, and be like, fuck you, no, F you, no, F you. And I'm like, what is going on here? But they're just like, they were joking around. They were like giving each other shit, right? Just like two friends. But one of them just happens to be the other one's trainer. And when it's time to listen, he listens. But sometimes, they talk shit to each other. Sometimes they play around like, yeah, it's not the same relationship. First time you come here, you're like in shock.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, when I switched from that traditional martial arts climate, it was almost like a relief. Like it was shocking. It was very different. I wasn't like, I personally didn't fit in at the beginning. I was like, I was the humble, polite, traditional martial arts guy, and I was like, okay, how do I get around this? Fuck you, fuck that. I was like, that was not my language, and I was like, I didn't have anything against it, but I just didn't even like know how to communicate in that. It took me a while to kind of become comfortable at it, and I'm like, I don't swear too much either these days, but I became, and it's not like they encouraged me to swear, but almost it was like almost nice to allow myself to do that after being the sensei for so many years. And I think, but kind of becoming comfortable at that environment, I think that was very healthy for me. Like I started to feel more myself because I didn't have to think that much about what I should say, what I shouldn't say, how I should act, how I shouldn't act, which was part of the kind of a much more likely to happen in the traditional martial arts realm.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I feel you. I think, maybe we're like close in temperament, me and you.
Yeah,
And
could be.
yeah, like, it's also like relieving to not be the sensei or not be like the top student. And now you got to show something and everybody, all the class is looking and you got to show it and do it and the best and, and do it 200%. When you show up and you're just a white belt, you're just the new guy, no expectations. You're more like free.
Yeah.
Like it's fun to be like a beginner for a little bit. Not like you want to drag ass for years now and just be another guy in the room. No, of course, you want to get to that status when everybody's looking up to you in the gym and you can show how to do things properly, of course. But it's also like very relieving for a little bit to be like the new guy, not expected to know anything. You can screw everything up and it's good.
Yeah, for sure. I had this difficult experience when I was an Aikido instructor and had my dojo. I was the sensei, and I was also teaching yoga at the time. And one time I went to drink some alcoholic drink in a bar. And later I learned that some people saw me, and it's like it was a small town, like 100,000 people, and a lot of people got upset, and they started to think that I'm not a legit martial arts / yoga instructor because I was having a drink. And for me, I didn't see that coming. It was almost shocking, and I remember I was really frustrated and almost baffled because I wanted to have that positive influence on people, but at the same time I had to choose, okay, so do I become a saint and for the sake of others because that's what they expect me to do, or do I betray them and be a normal human being? It was like a really tough period of my life, and I just didn't, for a while I just couldn't do anything outside. But then I think that that's a dark side or a downside, and
That's
maybe
crazy.
it's entirely crazy, but I understand where people were coming from, and maybe partly I'm to blame for that myself, because I was always trying to be my perfect version, to always show the best and say the best things, and I just wanted to be the best teacher possible. And I think I brought up the expectation so high that being a normal human being wasn't good enough for them anymore. But at the same time, I think it's nice that in MMA, I don't see that expectation out there, like the coach or the fighter. I think also there may be some edges there. There may be there may be some expectations, but you're much more allowed and expected to be a regular human being who's just really good at this thing. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, Did you ever went through something like that?
Not something like that, you know. I think that's putting a lot on yourself. I think I personally like it would be rare for somebody to catch me having a drink,
Right.
but like, what's the big deal? Like,
Mm.
if I'd seen you at the subway station passed out on the stairs, I'd be like, oh, something's wrong with this guy. But just
Sure.
having a drink, I think that's a little rough. And you know, whoever has been to Japan knows that like all the karate masters, I think all Japanese people probably, they get hammered every night after training, like in a bad way. Like when I was there, I would, you know, when I was training in Okinawa, first time I was 16, and funny story is I told my mom my teacher's going to Japan. I want to go train with him. And she said, and I was like, can I? And she was like, sure, honey, you can. Like she didn't really believe I was gonna. And that same week I show up with a plane ticket. I'm like, that's it, mom, I bought my ticket. She's like, what? Where? I'm like, yeah, you already agreed.
Oh wow, that's nice. That's funny.
Yeah. And so I flew to Japan. Obviously, many stories from there, but a big thing connected to what we're speaking of is all the Japanese people, like I said, they get hammered. And every night after training, they would pretty much force us to go drink with them. Like,
Oh
I'm sure
wow.
you could say no. I'm sure you could say, um, you know, I'm going home, I'm tired, but that wouldn't be like seen well. Um, and so even I would drink some like a local drink. They would have me drink, and for me, like it kind of made me look at them differently. Yeah, because it wasn't like, oh, having a drink. I'm like, why are these people who are supposedly like next level beings, right? Supposedly, like why are they getting drunk so much? And it just kind of made me think less of them, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm. Mm.
And even one night, we went. You know, there's like in the style I did, there's like a toe kick, like when you hold your toes in a certain position so you can kick with them, and
Okay.
it's
Mm.
pretty hard. Like it hurts to get kicked by it, but also at first it hurts to kick with it. And one night the master was just drunk. He was like, "Give me your foot." Held my foot with one hand, told me to do like socks in position, like the toes, and just with a whiskey bottle, started hitting my toes, and I was just
Fuck.
holding. Yeah, but he taught me pretty well because they didn't break.
Oh wow. Well,
Yeah,
yeah. I really like what the point you're bringing in. It makes me think too. And I remember how much I used to godify especially the Japanese senseis in from all the, like, obviously I'm thinking about Aikido, but all the big masters, I would imagine they're perfect, and I imagine the founder of Aikido to be perfect. And there's a lot of stories which presented them as perfect, like some beyond human beings. And then I would start to hear some real stories from people who met them. And there's one of the top Aikido senseis in particular. Turns out, heard it from many different people who trained with him. Turns out he would regularly come in drunk to teach classes. And I won't name some other things he did, like some nasty stuff. Nothing too extreme, but like really like stuff you shouldn't do. But let's say, if we stick with the teaching drunk, it's so contrary to the ideas we have about that Sifu sensei with the beard and all wise and perfect. And I think, but then at the same time, I guess, well, teaching someone coming to teach class drunk, I think that's a taboo for me. I wouldn't go there. but I think the issue also is that there is that image that that's being pushed on traditional martial arts senseis. Like and it can go both ways. Like it's pushed by the culture, like the sensei, that term, like in West, in Japan. And from what I hear in Japan, it's not as saint, but in West, it's like sensei is like, oh, it's a big deal, and we're expecting them to be like that. But sometimes also there's the expectation built from them, like, okay, respect me, I'm your sensei, and I think, yeah, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's not, it can be also harmful, and yeah, I'm not sure if that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I think teaching class drunk, for me, it's a big no-no. Like, if I go learn somewhere and like the teacher is drunk, like I'd heavily consider to not going back. Like I know
Mm.
some people, like they got all kinds of shit in their life going, but still, like there's a limit. I think if somebody pays you to come learn from you, you don't show up not drunk and not high, which is nowadays more often like trainers, yeah, just smoke something and then go teach. Like that's not cool. Um, People who pay you should have like 100% of your attention.
Mm.
And a lot of those people also, like from a trying to understand them kind of point of view, like being a teacher, it wears you out. Like it's tough. People think like, oh, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Not exactly true. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's whether it be teaching or whether it be like training every day and sparring and doing whatnot to be a fighter. Um, yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's very like fulfilling, but it's also very hard. It's also tough, right? Even though training martial arts is the thing I love doing most in the world, and I chose it as a career path in different ways, it doesn't mean every morning when I wake up, that's what I want to do, like hit the gym. Yeah, most of the days I wake up, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to the gym, beat up on my friends. They're going to beat up on me, and it's going to be a blast. And some days you wake up, your back hurts, your knee hurts, you got ears like cauliflower ears, like hurting, whatnot. And you're like, man, I don't want to do this. I want to stay home and play video games. But that's the difference. Like, if you have a lot of people who ask me on Instagram, hey man, I don't have motivation to train. How do I get motivation? And I tell them, motivation is for kids. I have discipline. And
Mm.
even when you don't want to do it, you still do it because you have a goal, right? You have enough self-respect that you're willing to give up on what's comfortable now for what will be good for you in the long run. And like most of the time, for sure, I love training.
Mm.
Sometimes I hate it, but I still do it either way.
Mm. Yeah. Again, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think it's a great message. It's also, I remember we already like had that chat on Instagram, and we already kind of touched a little bit about the challenge of teaching constantly. And I think people who don't experience that, it's really hard for them to understand. Like it's grass is greener on the other side of the fence. That's a normal human being mindset. We all imagine that things are better somewhere else, and I also agree, like having your own dojo or gym, teaching, it's to a degree it's great, and some people for sure, like it's better than a lot of different work. But then there's also that idea behind people like, oh, it's easy work. You just like, I had that, and I mentioned that to you before, but I had that with my students. They would look at me and they'd say, oh, you have such a good and easy life, and I'm like, what do you mean? And their answer was, well, I come into the dojo like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. The rest of the day, it's like it's only from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. So it's like you teach only so little, only on those days. But it's like, no, man. Well, first of all, it's a huge. It takes a lot of you to be there and to look at everyone and to supervise and to come up with a training plan. There's a lot of preparation before that. There's a cool down period after that, and it's like there's also the dojo things you have to take care of, like the business side of it and the students' relationships. There's just so much out there, and I had the same experience like you. Sometimes I would love it, and sometimes I was like, this is tough. And even like till today, a lot of people ask me, I don't feel by any means whatsoever ready to teach yet, even technically. Like, I don't think I have the amount of knowledge I should have. But when a lot of people ask me, like, so, oh, are you going to teach anytime soon? And I'm like, I think I'm still recovering from that experience of teaching all the time. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, and I think also we talked about it on Instagram, but you know, yeah, for like, I still want to teach, but like you, I'm still recovering from like teaching, right? I don't want to like overdo it. I want to do it right now when I'm focused on my career, and but I do want to do it in the future. And something that's made me want to do it a little bit more is like Cobra Kai, the series. And
Yeah, same here.
first of all, it, like you know that meme when there's like you see something and there's like choppers and it's like PTSD, right? For me, sometimes when I watch Cobra Kai, I'm like, this is exactly what happened to me. Like, this is my childhood right here. But also,
Mm,
there's something like fun about it, and there was like a lot of good times. And again, I think it changed me for the better. With the bad, it was mostly good. And you know, I'm looking forward to after my fighting career, maybe like with a little bit less BS and a little bit less, a lot less like will to control people, just help people, and and yeah, I think that's a like a big calling for me. And on what you said with the gym, people don't know like you're running a business, right? You got to keep the lights on. So it's not only coming in and teaching, it's whenever somebody leaves the dojo, like you kind of panic. What are you going to do now? Are you going to keep the lights on? You know, whether it be like old school, we would like give out flyers outside of schools and whatnot. Like, it's a job. Now, if you tell me I'm getting a salary and I got to work 2 hours a day, what is it, teaching or construction? Yeah, it's going to be teaching. But over like a long time, when you're worried about the money, when you're running your business, being a teacher is very rough. And I know
yeah.
some people maybe wanted to be great teachers, trainers of world champions, and then all of a sudden, 20 years later, they're teaching kids class at some jiu-jitsu school, and they show up drunk. And tough for them, but still, if you took the job, show up and show respect to the students.
For sure. Yeah, that's I resonate with that too. The way I used to teach, I would teach every class as if it was my last class, as if as well like my life depended on it. And I think that also led me a bit to a burnout because I couldn't just come in. It was not part of me to come in and be like, oh, let's just do whatever. But I was like, no, this has to be every class has to be the best class. It made me, I think, into a pretty good teacher, but it also burnt me out. But then it's funny too. You mentioned about Cobra Kai because I had the exact same thing. I was watching it with my girlfriend, and like the last season came out recently, and I caught myself feeling like, oh, actually, part of me misses that experience of welcoming people, of motivating them, and helping them transform. And I was like, wow, that's like it's been a while since I thought about it that way. But it's funny that that show made us both feel the same thing. Um, so actually, looking at the time, and usually around an hour, which we have right now, I open up the conversation to other people. There's the chat. I don't know. Probably you don't see the chat. Do you see the chat? No.
Is
Don't
it on
have to.
YouTube, the chat?
Oh yeah, so yeah, don't worry about it. I guess since I'm the host, I see it, but I'll just skim through them and I'll highlight the questions that people have.
Cool.
So that's the moment where I just want to address the audience. There's a bit of a delay between what we see each other and the chat. Like people see us like 20 seconds later, so there's going to be a delay. But whoever has questions, primarily for Natan, for me as well, but the guest comes first. Anything around the subjects we spoke about or Natan's experience, martial arts journey. So wherever we have, write down those questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Actually, it's just one question. I think until the questions arrive, I think that question, I'm sure that it's on a lot of people's minds, and so I'll just ask that before heading to everyone else's questions. So, how was it for you to blend your karate and kung fu experience with MMA? Like, how much did that come through? Was it easy to do? Was it difficult to do? I wonder if it's a common question you get altogether.
Talking more like I'll talk in general, like skill set and mentality. I think mentality really puts me like apart from other people. Like I said, consistency and discipline, and it's something that I think some people lack, especially like who wasn't taught it? Whoever walked into the gym and just was taught how to jab, how to cross, hook, low kick, and like he's kind of missing a piece of the puzzle. And technique wise, I get asked a ton like, oh, what do you use? Really, I'd say like kung fu, I don't use anything. I think like the style I was doing, I really like. I don't want to say it was like wasted time, because there are some good things. I see it, Ido Portal, movement coach, right? I see it as if I was learning movement. And that's how I see kata to this day. I'm like, yeah, okay, block this way, attack that way, kick the other way, and defeat all 10 opponents. But for me, it's more about like when I do it or the training I had in it, I see it as movement training. If you punch, you gotta stop at this exact inch. Your elbow needs to be down, not up, right? And that's really how I see it. Like, I know you're not going to use it in a fight, and I'm still cool with doing it sometimes, because for me, it's like, okay, let's just go through the motion. Let's do something uncomfortable for my body. My body wants to go that way. No, I'm going to tame it, right? Like a horse, and tell it how to bend the knee and everything else. And really, like mostly I use movement, kicks, in and outs, angles. That's very karate, but also not completely. Like I mix it with like boxing footwork, and the strikes have changed, they've evolved over the years. But I think everybody who sees me fight immediately knows I come from a karate background, which is, it's cool. Some people like, I like it when people write like, you come from a South China Kung Fu style. I'm like, how do you know? Like they see something in it, which is cool. Like it means there is something in it. But at the same time, like, so you see something there, but if this part is missing, will it really like change the whole picture? I don't know. I don't think so. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a pro fighter, and my coach, and I was telling him, we were talking about, like, for me, there's 3 different kinds of fighters. There's like fighters, let's call it prize fighters, right? I just want to fight to get paid. I don't care about anything. I'm just here to throw hands. Okay. Then you got like an athlete. This is somebody who's like, is mainly like, he's a fighter, he fights, but his main thing is like the sports side of it. He's like, if he wasn't doing MMA, he could be doing football, he could be doing soccer, he'd be doing like something. He's just an athletic guy, likes sports, and so happened to be doing fighting. And then the third is like a martial artist. It's a different mindset from the two others. A martial artist, if there was no like, unlike the athlete, if there was no like martial arts competitions, he wouldn't be competing in anything, right? He would just be doing martial arts without competing. But since he can compete, he does. And his goal is to improve every day and be better than he was yesterday. And all the martial arts, attributes we give. Of course, everybody's different and individual, but that's how I categorize it. I see somebody, okay. And I was telling my friend who's a boxer, like mainly a boxer in MMA, and I was telling him, what, you're telling me like in the boxing gym, they don't teach like, or I was just saying like, yeah, even in the boxing gym, they teach kids like, some respect, some of this. And he's like, and he just started laughing and said, no, you just show up and learn how to fight. And he said, I am 0% martial artist. I just want to fight and get paid. And like we were all laughing. And yeah, it's true. Some people are that way. Some are the other.
Yeah, nice. So, question from the audience, Alex and M. I want to ask Natan, what's his opinion on Krav Maga? Is it worth training if it's not inside IDF?
First of all, you're assuming it's worth training in the IDF, which, in the IDF, when people recruit, their main thing is going to be, shooting, using all kinds of technologies. Some people like are, gathering intel. Many jobs there are in the army, but nobody is really like counting on hand-to-hand combat that much. So it's a very small, like everybody does, but just a tiny bit of it. So it's not like to talk down on Krav Maga. Just when you're in the IDF, you don't really have time to do that much Krav Maga. You're more gonna learn your profession, military protocol and your job, and really a small percentage are gonna do Krav Maga. The ones who are gonna do this the most, of course, are the instructors who go through like a long course so they can teach it. But when they do teach it, it's very it's a very small amount for a very short time. Now, I think Krav Maga, I don't see it really as a martial arts. I see it as a fighting system. Like we go back to the earlier story I was telling. You're not doing it to become better tomorrow, right? You're not doing it to be more fit or more healthy, even usually. You're doing it so you can fight. The prize is save your own life or save somebody close to you. And for that, I think some of the techniques are a little bit ancient. I really like the philosophy of like taking what is useful from different martial arts, making it very basic. The whole point is that you should be able to learn the concept of it very fast, and it's not something you need to dedicate years of to get proficient at, which is cool. I have a friend here in Vegas. His name is Shannon. He runs an organization called the Nomad Krav Maga, and we train together. I show him a lot of MMA stuff and karate stuff because he's very like open-minded, and he thinks MMA, like Krav Maga, should be a very simple version of MMA. You should have some boxing, kicks, right? Some wrestling. Can you take somebody down? Can you get up if somebody takes you down? Can you throw a triangle on somebody who takes you down, right? With basic submissions. And I think that's the best way I've seen so far, in my opinion, to do Krav Maga. Because Krav Maga is like Jeet Kune Do, right? It's not really a style. There's no syllabus. It's a mix of other styles. So evolve, like it's something I hate about karate. It's when you show a technique and it's like, you don't do it that way, you do it this way. Why? Oh, because the Japanese dude said so 100 years ago. And what I like about MMA is like, you think you should do it this way, I think I should do it that way. Let's try, right? Let's see how fast my partner taps when I do it in different ways. Maybe one move is better for one time and another for a different time. So I like testing things and seeing what works and what doesn't work in general and for me. And in his style, as you evolve, your MMA game becomes bigger, right? More submissions, more strikes. But at the basis of it, you can't tell me you're going to learn a bunch of striking and zero ground or zero wrestling, because that's not real self-defense. There is no self-defense without ground fighting.
Moving on with another question. So Ibrahim Khalil is checking what was your karate style and belt and years of experience. You feel free if you don't want to answer that, just let me know. But that's the question.
So I was doing Uchiru karate, Okinawan style, for 7-8 years before I flew to Vegas. Then I still consider myself like I was still training. I don't call it like time that I was off karate, but I wasn't really doing much of it. And then in 2017, I flew to Tokyo and started doing Kyokushin. And like a year ago, I got my brown belt in it. And in Uchiru, I was third-degree black belt.
Cool. I believe this question is for you, from Dana Udelevich. You see, I'll just read it out loud. How has your wonderful wife supported you all these years?
Chill, honey. That's my wife. She's.
Okay. I was like, that's a good question. I wonder who asked that.
Usually I mention her without needing those tricks, but since I forgot, she's amazing.
I didn't bring that up either, so.
Yeah. And, when I first started before I even flew to Vegas, I told her, like, I wanted to be with her. And I told her, look, I want us to be together. But a year from now, I'm going to Vegas to become a UFC fighter. Now, anybody would think this guy is crazy. What the hell is he talking about? And say no or whatnot. But she just believed in me and she said, yeah, sure, I'm with you. And, for years, like I told you, I didn't have any students anymore. So I worked security. And I would have to imagine going from teaching privates and, having a bunch of people at the same time, teaching them, and getting paid well. And they're all your students, it wears you out. We talked about how rough it is to be a teacher, but at the same time, it is a great job, right? And then you're working security, and from there, you're going to working security in shit clubs, having to throw out drunk people, and just the worst, and thinking, is this all for nothing? Is this dream ever going to come true? I didn't even have an amateur fight when all this happened. So, it was for years, it was a big question mark. Am I even ever going to fight, let alone make it to the UFC, be a champion? Am I even going to fight? Is this all crazy dream that I'm following and giving up on everything that I have for this fantasy, right? And the only thing I had was my wife. Back then, she was my girlfriend. who stood with me and believed in me. And when we moved here, like I first came here 7 years ago, and funny things, just like in Okinawa, same thing. I would ride my bicycle to training, and it was same like in Japan. Like history repeats itself. In Japan, I would ride 15 miles, like maybe even a little more, like an hour and a half, 2 hours on my bicycle to get to training every day.
Wow.
And then when I got to Vegas, I would do the same thing to drive up to Red Rock from my house. Would ride the bicycle like a maniac to get to training. And that's like I was really like I didn't have money. Everything was shit. Everything was like so bad, and she was the only thing that was good, and she supported me. Like we moved here together, and she left home for me, and we've been here since. So yeah, like she's always been there for me, and I'm not just saying this to answer her and like give her props, but to tell everybody like when you have somebody who believes in you, it makes a difference.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Huge props to your wife. Sounds like she's awesome. And then we have Alex again is asking, when is your first UFC fight? Does that make sense?
Yeah, can't tell,
Okay.
but it's coming.
Good. Cool. Very cool. So we kind of discussed this already. You said that's probably not like a question that is even worth answering. What is your favorite karate tactic technique to use for MMA, or do you have do you have some answer for that?
I have like a bunch, but I think one of the most useful things I use to this day is like a foot sweep. Because when you're fighting in MMA and you want to get somebody down, maybe it's because he rocked you with a good strike. Maybe it's because just like your jiu-jitsu is superior, and shooting for a takedown and starting to wrestle, and he puts in the underhooks, and you're wrestling to get the leg, and by the time you get him down, you're kind of exhausted. You need to rest on top of him for 10 seconds before you can throw a strike, because you don't want to gas yourself out and do too much. On the other hand, you can just let somebody step to you, sweep his leg from under him. He's on his back, you're on top. Easy work.
Nice. Very cool. So Ibrahim is asking also what Kung Fu style you studied, but I think your wife answered. Is that
Kung Fu, yeah.
Okay. And I'm looking if there's anything. Oh wow. Okay. Well, there's a follow-up. What type of Panguin Kung Fu animal style? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. So it's like the legend says it's 3 styles of Kung Fu, like tiger, dragon, crane, and they were mixed together to make Pangainun Kung Fu. So you basically learn all 3.
Okay. Cool. And okay, I haven't had a chance to check this one, so let's see if this is a good one or not. Since weight divisions doesn't exist in real life, how realistic is it for small guys and women to be able to defend themselves using martial arts? Is it feeding a dangerous false sense of confidence? But that's a great question. What do you think?
Great question. I think it depends how small you are. Look, technique is a force multiplier, right? So if I have certain amount of strength, I can throw a punch at a certain power, and then with proper technique, I can magnify it times 3, times 5, right? But it's always going to be anchored to my strength. Now, same thing goes for like when people say, oh, you don't need strength in martial arts. Not true, because the moment I get stronger, I have a bigger number to multiply by using my technique. So being strong is very important for martial arts. Being athletic is very important. it can definitely help you get out of a bad situation, but I wouldn't count on it. Like, I wouldn't put somebody, I would never tell a small guy or female that I would teach, you can defend yourself against anybody. No, because at some point, somebody can be so much bigger that no matter how much you multiply yourself, you don't get there. And of course, the best answer is to have a gun for self-defense or something like that. I'm not sure if in Lithuania it's like in America where everybody's carrying.
Not
Yeah,
no no.
neither in Israel.
Yeah.
But I would really just, I think martial arts would help you maybe walk around with more confidence, not looking as much as an easy target, right? If I'm a bad guy and I want to rob somebody or do something to somebody, I'm gonna look for, like any bully is gonna look for the easiest target.
Yeah.
Who's the easiest target? The guy who's walking slouched and looks like you can push him around. That's what bullies live off of. And if you can walk, maybe you're not going to be a huge bodybuilder, but if you can walk more proud, with more self-confidence, maybe you're just going to get skipped for not looking like an easy target. And of course, don't be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Real self-defense starts with being aware of your surrounding and not just walking in the wrong neighborhood, and keep yourself safe. And that's it, really.
It's a very good answer, I'd say. Also, I just wanted to bring up some feedback. Alex is thanking you for saying that it's the best answer he heard about Krav Maga. And also an interesting question from Ibrahim. So, did the Iron Fist conditioning from Uchiru help you in MMA?
No.
Okay.
There are things that are just not time efficient, and many of them is like knuckle conditioning. I was telling a friend the other day who's getting started in MMA, and I told her, look, there's a time where you need to wrap your hands all the time to keep your wrists safe so you have longevity, right?
Yep.
You need to put the headgear on when you're sparring, to not get caught so you don't get a fight canceled, and to accumulate less concussions, and right shin pads, because you don't want your shins hurting while you're training. You want to finish one session and be as close as possible to healthy for the next one. And then there is, in the evolution like we spoke about, an earlier stage in your career where you need to train on the heavy back bare knuckle and hurt your knuckles, right? And sometimes get drill with no shin pad so your shin hurt, and get hit with no helmet so you know what it feels like, right? To toughen you up a little bit, you do have to go through those things. If since day one, wrapping your wrist, how they wrap your hands in a professional fight with like gauze and tape.
Yeah.
So like McGregor or big people who have the money for it, get like this kind of wrap before every training. Okay. It don't mean like it's healthy, it's good for you, it will save your knuckles and your hand, but it doesn't mean you need it from the first day you start training. At first, you need to be tough through those things, and get hurt in the shin, and get hit in the face, and hurt your knuckles, and hit the heavy bag until you bleed through your knuckles. Yeah, that'll tough you up, and then slowly transition to being more like health focused and performance focused. So, did the Iron Fist conditioning in Uchiru help me? Yeah, look, when I was 16 and I punched the wall until my knuckle bleed, yeah, maybe it made me a little bit more tough. Maybe, you know, maybe it made something a little bit stronger in there, perhaps. But when I threw a full-on punch to somebody's forehead in an MMA fight, I broke my hand on his face, on his forehead, because it's a strong bone. No amount of conditioning would help. You know what would have helped? If I would have aimed better for the chin. So maybe instead of you doing 2 hours a day of makiwara and maybe just aim, maybe get a double impact that's moving around and you gotta hit it, right? That would make you way less likely to break your hand in a fight.
Cool. Well, we have time for just
If you
a
want
couple
shorter
more.
answers, let me know.
No, I love your answers. They're really great. I love it. But I'm just giving a heads up. We have a time for just a couple more questions. So UT is asking, what was the biggest difference between traditional and mixed martial arts for you?
The biggest difference, yeah, just the mentality, just the we don't do things because I say so. We do things because they're the right thing to do. And are they the right thing to do? Let's question that for a second and try and see.
Cool. And Renato Valenzuela, do you think it's worth learning karate as a fight system instead of kickboxing, Muay Thai, etc.?
I think, yes. Like, I think you got to do what you like. And I think karate has a lot of good things going for it. You know, some people don't want to get punched in the face, right? Then karate is probably better for them. Some people are really into Japan and the culture. Then karate would be pretty cool for them as well. And also, you know, you can see many good karate fighters were amazing competitors in K1 and kickboxing and even MMA to this day. Of course, for MMA, you need other pieces of the puzzle, but I wouldn't automatically say no, kickboxing or Muay Thai is better than karate. Not at all.
Okay. And this will probably be the last question again by Alex. What should a newbie start with when she first starts martial arts from a self-defense point of view? Grappling first, striking first, or directly MMA?
Even if you're going to go learn MMA, there's going to be an order to things you learn. I think it should be striking. Every fight starts on the feet, and like before it hits the ground, you should know what to do. Now, I don't think you should learn both at the same time. I think you should start with striking, depending on if your goal is to compete or not. But I think you should be investing all the time you have to train in striking for at least a year or two before you pick up grappling. Unless you're really passionate about grappling, that's what you're mostly interested in, and then do what's fun, do what's good for you. But if you want to compete and you don't have a preference, I would definitely suggest starting with standing.
Nice. Yeah, I personally went the opposite way, more or less. Like I started off with grappling, and now I'm finally getting into kickboxing, like striking. And I'm like, I feel like I probably should have started the other way around. So, so yeah.
Hey, look, jiu-jitsu is so much fun. People fall in love with it. I fell in love with it when I first came to Vegas and I had like zero ground. I would train 4 or 5 times a day. 2 of these at least were jiu-jitsu, like 2 sessions of jiu-jitsu at least every day for months. And I was lucky enough to also live and be roommates with Fredson Paixão, who's like 7 times world champion. And like he would just show me moves, you know, on the mat, in the house. I was just like drowning in jiu-jitsu, and I think that's what really made me good at it, that I was like completely committed to it. And I had another guy living with us. It was like a fighter house. And he would always talk about like his punch card. He had like a punch card for the gym. and be like, no, I don't want to waste it on jujitsu. He was here to train. I don't understand how somebody can fly to a different country to train, and then instead of doing a full membership, get a punch card and like, you know, weird. But anyway, he wouldn't want to waste it on jiu-jitsu. He'd say, I just want to do jiu-jitsu once a week to learn how to defend chokes, and that's it. And I recently like just remembered him, and I was like, let's check him out on like Topology, and his record is like 1 win and 8 losses.
Oh, snap.
So that didn't go so well for him. I'm glad I chose my way of, I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy, but let's learn everything we can about it.
Hmm. Well, actually, just before we finish up, that reminded me of a question which I was curious about. Somebody mentioned that in the comment, and I thought it'll be interesting to ask. So, you start off with karate as your main background, which is striking, and but then your fight finishes, from what I saw in your record, are usually submissions. And correct me if I'm wrong. So, how did that happen? Like, is there anything there? Is it just happen like that, or is there anything you could say about that?
Um, I think it just like, I think I'm more naturally gifted in jiu-jitsu than I ever was in striking. And I think I also, like I said, I really like absorbed it and wanted to learn it and be good at it. And sometimes when I'd hit somebody and they want to take me down and they'd already be a little bit rocked or whatnot, then it'd be very easy for me to secure a choke. And I got a good like killer instinct on the ground. And for me, like I don't want to say I'm annoyed by it, but like I don't really like it when people say like, "Oh, you represent karate so well. Oh, you represent Uchiru so well." I feel like it's a little bit diminishing what I'm doing. Like I'm trying to be the most complete fighter I can be, learn from everything. And yeah, I come from a karate background. Yeah, I represent karate a little bit, but like I'm trying to be so much more, and you're like kind of diminishing me to he's a karate fighter in MMA. No, I'm Natan Levy. I'm a complete fighter in MMA that so happens to learn and appreciate karate as well.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, and it also makes me think about two things. One is, well, disclaimer, I'm a 0-1 fighter per se, quote unquote. But I remember in my first fight, I obviously thought a lot about it, like, why I lost, what I could have done better. And my main mistake, I think, is because I wanted a knockout. And I hear that happen sometimes, that people push for a knockout and it just doesn't work. And then when my fight went to the ground, I was able to secure a double leg, but then I chose a bad approach on the ground. I lost the position, and I was so frustrated. It was super silly, super silly of me, but I was so frustrated that my knockout didn't work out, that I wasn't even doing my best to grapple. I was just sitting there frustrated in the middle of an octagon. But I think that approach which you have, it's not about doing the thing which sounds cool or looks good. It's about doing the right thing at the right time and wanting to be the ultimate fighter. Makes sense. And just a very quick one, also, the second thing, I recently became friends with fighter Sergey Mosloboyev, who's a kickboxing champion. And I asked him about his training methodology, and he said something similar to what you said. For him, it's all about always learning something new. And I think that's one of the reasons why he is a champion, because he was telling me, and he was just passionately telling me, that every time he goes somewhere to train, he's always like a blank page. He's interested. What do they do? How do they do it? He always wants to learn and improve more, instead of, oh, I got my title, I'm done, it doesn't matter, you guys know. So I think like that's the mindset of a champion, where you're always interested and you're choosing what works best instead of having your fixed mindset.
Yeah, I think so too. And how much training did you have before your first amateur fight? Like 6 months?
Six months, like pure training. Yeah.
I had my first amateur fight. I went to Vegas first time at 22 with like I didn't know anybody. with this crazy dream. I want to be a UFC fighter. And it took me 3 years to get my first amateur fight. So 3 years in which I was doing like MMA on and off when I was in Vegas, doing karate back home. And it's not the same. So first of all, I think props to you for going in that fight. And who knows, maybe one day 1-1.
Yeah, that would be nice. And again, I appreciate you saying that because like bringing up that idea, because I went through that thought it myself too, because after my first fight and loss, I really wanted to get back and win. And I went to do the 3 months intensive training camp. I burnt out, got injured, had to skip my second fight. But then I stopped and I realized that was such a silly approach because I wanted to push for it and make it happen as quick as possible. While later I realized, actually, I think I want to do the opposite. I want to prepare really well, like take my time, develop myself when I feel like I'm really ready instead of, oh no, the fight is almost here. I need to keep grinding and
Right.
pushing. And so I like your approach much more of just really having solid training and when you're really ready, going for it instead of, oh, maybe this is going to work out. So,
Yeah. And it wasn't like my choice. I came the first time to Vegas. I was here for 3 months. And I was lucky enough to meet my coach, Giff. I can tell you how lucky I am. Like I met him and I didn't know anybody. And he took me into his gym and said, and kind of gave me a shot to show him, what I know. And he told me, okay, show me your fight stance. First thing I do is like karate, completely bladed stance. And he just goes like, oh, fuck. But yeah, he took me under his wing and he taught me. And after, a few months right before I went home, I was like, I really want to fight, coach. Can I please get in an amateur fight? And, same thing, like I could have done what I wanted, but I listened and he said, no, you're not ready. Come back, we'll train some more. And then went back home, had to work security for months, save up some money, got back there. Was gonna fight, same thing. Went back home, and then he thought I was ready. Fight started getting canceled. And every time I only had a 3 months visa and I would train for 3 months, I would be expecting like a fight at the end of it. Fight falls through. Replacement falls through. Another replacement falls through. And you go back home and everybody's like, Natan, didn't you say you were going to Vegas to fight? Like, how come you're here again and you still didn't fight? It's been like 2 years that you've been going to Vegas. When are you fighting? And you're, no, this opponent, he had like a tooth infection. The doctor didn't let him fight. This happened. I was cutting weight in the top. They told me the corner can't find their fighter. A million things that just all sounds like lies and excuses. But eventually we got it in, and it took some time. And I had wished I would have started earlier, but at the same time, everything happened like it happened, and you don't want to change that. And when it was finally my time to fight, I feel like I was long overdue. But at the same time, I was like ripe for it. I was ready.
Nice. It's a great story. And we're already past our time, so I'll just ask the very last technical question. Is there anything you want to plug, like your Instagram page or anything where you usually want to draw the audience to check you out?
Yeah, Instagram is cool. Natan _Levy, NATAN LEVY.
Let me see. I'm typing that down and about to add that. Is that at the bottom? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And that's it. And I think, a message I'm really, like, I think you do it so well, and that's why that was like my biggest connection with your channel. And I feel like should be said is, a lot of people even like write me about it. Is people want to do MMA, people want to do things, and their teacher, their sensei tells them no, you shouldn't, or even like many people told me, hey, unless you're a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, you shouldn't go to Vegas. You shouldn't fight in MMA. First train in Israel until you reach your brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and only then would you have tools to even compete in MMA. Well, I just signed in the UFC and I'm still a blue belt, right? I would have still been in Israel waiting for my brown belt, but I didn't listen. And don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to people who want to tell you how to do things they never ever done in their life. And especially don't let people like of authority to you that you respect tell you how to live your life. Just do what you think is good for you.
Nice. Very good message for the end. So I'll press the end broadcast button in a moment, but then we can still stay for a few moments together. So just a quick thank you to the audience, and till next time, everyone.